Hey all, welcome back to the next segment of the First Gen Psychologist. I'm Dr. Lizette. I'm the First Gen Psychologist. I am a licensed psychologist, coach, speaker, writer, and today I am your host. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and the purpose of this series is to cover topics that destigmatize mental health, as well as topics for personal development and empowerment centered around the first gen experience. Today, I will be talking about how to navigate communication with family as a first-gen college student. And we will be learning more about this from Erica Medina, who is a doctoral student and mental health clinician. So let me share a little bit more about her. So Erica Medina is a second-year PsyD student. Her interests include working with underserved and minoritized adolescent and emerging adult populations from a systemic and multicultural perspective, implementing cognitive behavioral, humanistic, and psychodynamic interventions. She currently works with adolescents, their families, and emerging adults addressing various issues, including sexual and gender identity, adjustment and transitions, peer and family conflict, depression, anxiety, and psychosocial stressors within a school-based and hospital setting. She is also interested in the development of evidence-based interventions with an emphasis on Latino adolescents and emerging adults. Welcome. I realized, do you prefer Erika or Erica? I tend to switch.
That's okay. Either or is fine with me. I hear Erika all the time from like my family and all my Spanish speaking patients, and then Erica from everyone else. So either or, I'll respond to both.
Okay, perfect. All right. So let's get started. So I'm excited to learn from you today, hear a little bit more about your work. And so I know that this is, I think, also an identity of yours as well. You are also a first gen student. So we both have this shared identity along with the population we're talking about. So we may pull from our personal experiences today. So for the first question is, what are some common challenges faced by first-gen college students when communicating with their families about their college experience?
So right now I am working with a lot of first-gen college students actually from different diverse racial groups, religious groups,
Mhm.
different, so a lot of multicultural experiences in that as well. And I think a lot of what the literature shows is exactly what I'm seeing in real life with a lot of these students, that the big things that really are impacting their communication with their families are just difficulty in communicating what their responsibilities are. So just what is the college experience like? Like what does it require out of you? Not just the time commitments, but also what do tests look like? What does a day-to-day look like for a college student? Because it's all so different. And it's not just it's different every day, but different every semester as well, or every quarter. So it's something that's ever changing. And a lot of the people that I work with have always identified this as a big struggle for them, like being able to explain to their families, Mondays look like this for me, Fridays look like this, Wednesdays look like this pretty much every day, or even the hours that are changing for them, and being able to really navigate communicating that with their parents and their loved ones, because they might not just, unfortunately, might just not understand how is it that your schedule's so different every single day, and how can you navigate that with your day to day responsibilities as well, such as working and everything, which is kind of another thing that a lot of them have brought up, and that I see a lot, and this is a big one in the literature, communicating also living away from home and the expectations that a lot of these first gen students have, especially if they're the first one. I think in certain cultures, like we're expected to not leave home until we're married or we're in our late 20s, early 30s. So when you're leaving home at 18 years old, what is the expectation that you can communicate with your family and your parents, especially like, sorry, I might not be able to call you every day because I'm really busy, or sorry if I don't answer at this specific time. Like I'm okay, but I'm just in class or something. So being able to really communicate and navigate those expectations that parents have of them when they leave home, versus also how about first gen students who are living at home and their parents are seeing like, okay, like you're at home, what are you doing? You're not helping out with things that you used to help out with, more like chores. It's sorry, I'm doing homework, or I have to go to class or to a club meeting or something. So those are really big ones. And then I think just like from those, just seeing like the multiple relationships that or multiple identities that first generation college students hold as they navigate through all these roles of being a child or being somebody's child, being a student, a sibling, a grandchild, a significant other, and how these can lead to those communication issues of feeling levels of resentment, feeling frustration, feeling like they can't really engage in assertive communication, as well as engaging in more passive communication with their families and isolating.
Yeah. So it sounds like one of the biggest challenge is how to communicate the variety and the day-to-day that
Mhm.
a college student just experiences. But
Yeah.
because they're first gen, it's how, they're navigating something new. We navigated something new for the first time. And learning what's happening and trying to explain it to someone else. So it's it makes me think of I remember when I was learning in school, probably when I was in grade school, hearing people like, "Oh, when you learn you've learned something well enough when you are able to explain it to someone else."
Mhm.
And we're as first gens expected to do that in vivo, like at the time as it's happening.
Yeah,
And so it never quite feels like we fully learned and understood the expectations because there's so
exactly.
much of trying to go back and forth.
Yep.
And so yeah, so a common challenge is whether or not you're living at home is how to explain to your loved ones how your time, like where your time
Very
goes and
fun.
why certain things are
Mhm.
important. And
Exactly.
you started to touch on this a little bit, which is how can these begin to impact their mental health? You mentioned, experiencing some frustration, and so can you share a bit more?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we see in practice, and also this is all supported by the literature, that a lot of these students start to feel a lot of like isolation. They start to feel
Mhm.
guilty, misunderstood, lonely as well. And I've even heard this come up a lot for a lot of students, that they almost feel disrespected. And then that makes them feel really guilty. It's like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to feel disrespected by my family, but at the same time, like you're not respecting my responsibilities and my time, or just what I'm expected to do as a college student. And we have seen that a lot of these symptoms can lead, or a lot of these feelings and emotions can lead a lot of students to develop feelings of anxiety, depression, adjustment disorders as they're trying to navigate this transition. And I think exactly what you talked about, Dr. Lizette, like with that navigation, if you don't have anyone in your family who's ever gone through this before, who do you have to talk to? So you feel really isolated in that moment, because you're like, am I being a bad daughter? Am I being a bad son, a bad child, a bad sibling, by not being able to engage with my family in the way that I used to before? And these are going to impact our mental health, because especially when we're talking about different cultures where maybe like it's expected for you to be at every family function, or be responsible with your family, like help out with finances, things like that.
Mhm.
And if you can't engage in that responsibility anymore, it's going to make you feel very isolated, almost like a sense of betrayal towards your family.
Yeah. So some guilt, a sense of betrayal. You mentioned something that I want to take a moment to define. You
Mhm.
mentioned something people can experience is something called an adjustment disorder.
Yes.
And so that is quite common for us, but not
Yeah.
as common for everyone else. So
Yeah.
when you say adjustment disorder, what does that encompass? What does that mean?
So the difficulty with experiencing different similar symptoms to potentially anxiety, depression that happen after a specific situation or a moment that changed things for you. So it could be transition into going to college, moving away from home, a breakup, different situations like this. We can even see it sometimes with grief. But most of these situations are situational experiences which lead your adjustment to be affected. So you are impacted by demonstrating some of these symptoms of anxiety and depression.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yes. And so I think it can be scary when you hear the term adjustment
Yes.
disorder. But I think from our end, I'll say clinically, certain there's diagnosis for
Exactly.
when you're working with insurance and something to provide a diagnosis. Adjustment disorder essentially just means we're going through a transition.
Yeah.
We're
We're
going
going
through
through a hard time.
having a hard time trying to get through it. And I have myself gone to therapy multiple times and I'm pretty sure my textbook says an adjustment disorder as a way to transition. So as we're talking, so this is how it can impact them. But let's talk about what are some helpful tools that might benefit students in these positions. So what are strategies that first-gen students can use to communicate effectively with their families? And I made it specific about their academic progress and challenges, but just generally about, their college experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you have any strategies that can help?
Yeah, I think a big thing is definitely reaching out to whatever resources your school has. And I think schools now have, we've seen it so much in the last couple of years, more so than probably when we were in undergrad, but we've seen it a lot more with first to go programs, first gen programs, which offer a lot of support. I would say something that I definitely encourage students to do, and something that I wish I would have taken advantage of a little bit more when I was in undergrad, finding a mentor who is a first gen. I think now it's definitely something that is more spoken about. So being able to find a mentor who understands that experience, who went through it too. And now they're probably like, they've gone through a doctorate most likely. So they've gone through it many times, being a first gen student. So I think finding a mentor is a great resource. I know a lot of the universities now also have psychologists and clinicians at the school counseling, at the college counseling center, who specialize with first gens and who run groups for first gens and everything. And something that actually I'm going to be doing at my next practicum site, which I'm very excited about. And I think it's something that like so many schools are doing now, because they recognize like how important first gen issues are, and that it's something separate from like the larger majority at a university campus. So that's a really big deal. And then community colleges have these programs as well. So it's not limited to just four-year universities. Community colleges have these programs too. And then I think something that I definitely always suggest and work on with and encourage the students that I work with is to really be patient with themselves too, because this is a process for themselves, and it's an adjustment for everybody. It's an adjustment for themselves, for their families, for their parents, for everyone, for their loved ones. So being really patient with themselves, with their families, and recognizing like the more, I think kind of exactly said, when I'm able to learn more about it, then I can really explain it better. And I think something that I've also really encouraged, and something that I've done myself, is literally create a schedule with my family, especially being out of state, and recognizing like, okay, I'm going to call you guys like at this time, or like I can FaceTime this day, or kind of giving a schedule. Obviously, like we don't want to like, some of us may not want to like tell them everything we're doing all day, but kind of creating a schedule with them of like, you know what, like these days I'm free. Like, how about we schedule something every Wednesday or every Sunday or something where we talk, to kind of release that, that frustration that might come from not being able to communicate with your family about your schedule, your achievements, all of that. And I think a big part of it too is just being able to explain to your family, even if they may not understand exactly what the process is, explaining to them what you're doing. I know for me personally, like explaining the doctoral process as a first gen has been very difficult for my family, because they don't understand what that process is like. So telling them like, yeah, I'm doing practicum, or I'm working on my dissertation. This takes 3 years to do. Like, oh, it's not, I turned it in, but I turned in just the one section of it.
Yeah.
So really explaining to our families those step-by-step components of our process.
No, absolutely. And I switched the question, because it's like we were talking about some strategies, and we were also talking about courses. And so within I guess the strategies, is one of them is utilize your resources. Look into the campus that you're at, whether it's a community college, a university, four-year college, any kind of institution. They typically have it, or their counseling center. They may be offering some resources specific to first gen. And I agree with you. I have seen so many more programs being developed focused around first gen, and it makes me quite happy to see them. But I'm not going to lie, I am also a little jealous.
Yeah, right.
I wish I had that when I was, several years ago in undergrad, right? And I think back, and there was programming for folks who came from underrepresented backgrounds, the trio programs. I can never speak more highly about these programs, because I think before there was official first gen programming, they were providing resources to students who were predominantly first gen and needing a bit more support. So looking into trio funded programs at your institution. Sometimes they're called a bit differently, but TRIO would be the federal funding where they get it from. So that would be listed in the name somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I think something you mentioned as a strategy specifically was just to not get discouraged by that experience of how hard it is. And, these questions all overlap a little bit, but basically like other consejos you may have for first-gen students who may be facing similar communication challenges with their families. Do you have anything?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think a big one, like a big consejo would just be acknowledge that you're feeling frustrated. I think that's like when you feel frustrated, when you feel upset or sad or just discouraged by feeling isolated, those moments, acknowledge it for sure and be able to explain that. And I know sometimes it can be even difficult to explain that to our families, especially when we're communicating, and communicating those feelings can be really hard. But I think acknowledging it and being patient with yourself in this process, because it is a process and it's something that, like, as you go through it, you're gonna develop the skills even more. But I think those would be my two biggest ones: be patient with yourself, acknowledge your feelings and all those, and that they are valid in what you're experiencing, and then also just be patient with your family members too, because they're going through this process also. They're kind of learning it too.
Yeah, it's I love the consejos you have. Consejos is advice in Spanish, or words of wisdom, as I like to translate.
Yeah.
I think consejos for meaning. But yeah, being patient with yourself, acknowledging this, it's a normal part of the process to experience that confusion. I think we both shared. I love the example that you shared in terms of how you're trying to make it work. But this is after years of trying different things. And so like it is, sometimes it is trial and error, and that's okay. It is setting boundaries. I remember how long it took my mom to respect "do not disturb," and I still have memories of my first year of college. My mom couldn't reach me, probably because I was studying and my phone was on silent. It was. I remember it was daytime, and she ended up calling all of my suite mates. When it was, and they're like, "Your mom is calling me." I'm just in my room. I think I just didn't realize. Oh, my phone was just on silent. I just didn't realize that. But I had to, in that moment, I remember feeling so frustrated and feeling, I don't feel trusted. Like, why don't you trust me? And my mom would always say, it's not that I don't trust you. I just don't trust everyone else.
Yep, exactly.
But in that moment, that feeling was, I don't feel trusted. I feel that, like, what am I doing? Like, I'm doing something wrong when I'm sitting here studying, trying to navigate that. So even when those feelings show up for you, reminding yourself that, it is an adjustment for the parents too. My mom was used to me being home every day, seeing me every day. And till this day, we still check in once a day. Okay. So like a text. But she was grieving me not being there. And so in those moments when she wanted to connect and she couldn't get a hold of me, that was an adjustment from being able to access me at any moment in time. And so while that doesn't necessarily excuse what's happening, it gives us a little bit more context to help us have a bit more patience around how do I then process this and talk to them about this. And that's why, I will add to say, we talked about resources, but that's why I always talk about how therapy, if you have access to that within your the setting you're in, it can be so helpful. And Edgar pointed out how so many counseling centers have therapists or clinicians who specialize in serving and working with the first gen community. Many of them similar to us, first gen.
First gens also.
So we have, in addition to our clinical expertise and training, there's a lived experience component that creates another layer of understanding. Although every experience is different, but it's an extra layer. So just something to just think about. And so as we get close to wrapping up, Erika, share a little bit more about how people can support you and your work.
Yes. So I'm only currently seeing patients through my practicum sites since I'm still a doctoral student, but I will begin collecting data for my dissertation starting this summer. So my dissertation is focused on creating an interpersonal therapy intervention, which is going to be aimed at addressing these things. So depression, communication about depression, and then help-seeking behaviors in Latino undergrads who are either between 18 to 20 years old, so the emerging adult stage. So if you identify as a Latino, Latinx emerging adult who is in college currently, and you're interested in participating, please, or if you know anyone who fits that criteria, send me an email over at emedina@msp.edu, and I'll get back to you about how you can participate in the study. So.
Awesome. And just to remind everyone, so that is if you are a college student who identifies as Latino, Latinx, Latine, 18 to 20 years old?
18 to 20, 21, yeah.
18 to 20, 21 in the US.
Yes, in the US.
In the US?
Yes.
Yeah, if that is you, or if you work with students who match that population, consider supporting Erica and her work. I keep wanting to say both.
Both is great.
Because that research part is one of the most challenging. Finding the participants for a research study is one of the most challenging parts of completing a dissertation. And so if you have access and can connect anyone with Erica, and Erica, if you ever have a flyer, I'm happy to share that.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I'll be going through the IRB process and everything very soon, so I'll be sending that out.
Yes. And so you have her email here. If for whatever reason you can't contact her, you can always reach out to me. I have a way of contacting Erica, so we can go from there. But this was wonderful, Erica. I thank you for your time, your energy, for, there's a lot that goes into showing up in this way. It can be really anxiety inducing. You did so wonderful. And so thank you so much. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Please like, share, subscribe, and I'll have new segments every Tuesday. And so please keep tuning in.
Thank you so much.